Good morning. Welcome, 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 1,000 welcomes. And we are meditating today. The topic is one life, part of our series on the entire human race. And we've been touching base with some really potent teachings of truth, teachings of oneness, shared by Howard Thurman, who was teacher and mentor to Dr. King, and by Olive Schreiner, who was one of the central sources of inspiration and guidance and illumination for Howard Thurman across the course of his adult lifetime. And so each of them has a direct perception of the yogic teachings. So the yogic teachings tell us, this is from the Isha Upanishad, that is whole, this is whole. Out of that wholeness emanates this wholeness. In the ocean of wholeness surge the waves of wholeness, yet that wholeness is never lost. Peace, bliss, peace. So the way Olive Schreiner put it, from her earliest days, she was aware that the universe is one, and it lives. That's her phrasing. Another way she phrased it, she said, if you want to use older language, that was like her fresh, contemporary way of putting it at the end of the 19th century. She said, if you want to use older language, God alone exists. So this is the exact teachings that are articulated by the yogic traditions. And the way Howard Thurman put it, he was aware as a young person standing on the beach at night and listening to the waves and seeing the trees, that it felt as if one lung was breathing. And it was breathing through him, and it was breathing through all of this life. So he also had that direct perception and that direct awareness as well. And so each of them, in their own lives, having that direct perception, asked a basic question, which is, how can I live this truth? How can I bring this truth to visible expression in my own daily life? So they identify as mystics. Howard Thurman said he recognized he was a mystic when he read Olive Schreiner. That was the first point at which he said, oh, she's a mystic, and so am I. So she helped him have language to describe this fundamental connectedness. So for each of us, we're inviting ourselves directly to feel our way into that recognition. The expression of life that is here, individualized as each of us, is completely non-separate from the whole. It is completely non-separate from the all. Never for one moment has it been separate. Never can it be separate. Never will it be separate. And that, again, is a basic teaching from the Upanishads. This is from the Isha. All this is indwelt by the divine. All of this. Everything in time and space, including the human physical form. All of this in time and space is pervaded by the divine. If you want to translate that slightly differently, the laws of energy govern each expression of one complete whole. So the laws of energy are here, and they are guiding us, they are supporting us, they are governing us, and they are equally guiding, governing, and supporting the whole. The Isha goes on to say, with non-attachment and purity of heart, enjoy life. Free your mind of coveting. So the teaching is saying, free yourself of lust, greed, anger, and limitation. For everything belongs to the divine. It really is saying, free yourself of non-attachment, for everything belongs to the divine. Among the attachments that we have are our ideas and concepts of the way things should be. So this is asking us, we can put this in many different ways, but for each of us, and I'm inviting myself to do this, I'm inviting all of us to do this, if lust, greed, anger, or limitation is present in me, I lovingly cup it in the palm of my hands, and I place it on the altar of light, and I allow it to be transformed. So if I am holding on to an image of the way things should be, I lovingly cup that in my palms, and I place that onto the altar of light, and I allow that to be transformed into the light. And what happens then is I'm in contact with the laws of energy that undergird and uphold and support the entire universe. Then I am in contact with what today, in colloquial terms, we would call self-acceptance, self-love, self-understanding, self-appreciation. Then I'm not holding myself apart from the love that moves the sun and the moon and the stars and the entire universe. But if I'm holding on to my pain, so join me please, cup any pain that you're carrying, lovingly place it onto the altar of light, just for now. You can come back later if you need to and pick it up if you need to. But just for now, lovingly set aside the pain we've been carrying, the concepts, our images and our ideas of perceived need. And we ask the divine, I set aside my ideas of perceived need. Show me what is. Show me what is possible. Show me what is needed. When that happens, separateness melts away from us. We transform, we change. So in the prayer from Swami Nityananda, we read about light, 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 limitless light. And this is our eternal nature. It's always true, it's always present, it's always available. For most humans, we grow into continuing awareness of that. So for most humans, this is not just a one and done kind of transformation that we connect with light and are transformed. And that's actually a grace. That's actually a mercy, because then we have time for our bodies and our nervous systems and our minds to change and to be transformed. We have time to be able to step forward and live these teachings of oneness, these teachings of wholeness, these teachings of the allness. So I have a couple of stories. The first two are kind of funny and cheerful and charming, and then the next one is some strong medicine. So here's one of the cheerful, funny, charming ones. And this is sort of like what is possible if we find ourselves truly living that one life, if we find ourselves truly expressing that. And so I came across, this was just yesterday, these images a woman has posted online. So she has this extremely beautiful, gregarious, affectionate golden retriever who will walk up to complete strangers and lean its head on their shoulders. And so she has a series of photos where she's like, this is a complete stranger. And the dog is like leaning into the person, and the person has its arms around the dog. She's like, never seen this person before in my life. And the dog is like right there on the blanket at the picnic with the family. And so the dog doesn't recognize strangers. The dog is sort of this expression of one life. Now, I'm being very respectful. I want to create a respectful segue here. That made me remember a friend of mine who happened to be a Jesuit who lived in that way. And so this friend of mine went with a group of students to Washington, and they were participating in a peace march. And the students got separated from my friend, who happened to be a Jesuit. And later they found him, and he was on a blanket with a family. And as the students were walking away with him, they said to him, "Oh, that's so great. I'm so happy that you got to see your friends. How long has it been since you've seen your friends?" And he said, "Well, they are my friends, and I just met them." And so for each of us, that's the way in which we are invited to approach the light in us, reaching out to the light, even in complete strangers. And then we move in friendship. We move in harmony. We move in this unity and this kind of energy of cooperation through the realm of time and space. Okay. Strong medicine interlude. So let's talk about the teachings of Jesus. As Howard Thurman presents the teachings of Jesus, Jesus is a little bit like spiritual dynamite. And so I'm inviting everyone to, again, lovingly collect your understanding up to this point of the teachings of Jesus, and just for right now, set them aside, as if you've never heard anything about this teacher and these teachings before. Here's what Howard Thurman says. Howard Thurman says, Jesus is the most dangerous figure on the horizon of mortal humans. If we took his teaching seriously, if we lived these teachings that he described, it would destroy our civilization. Not one stone would be left on another. And so what do? We pray to him instead. That's easier. Wow. Spiritual dynamite. And the reason that Howard Thurman is saying that, I'm about to share you a couple of the reasons. And to find an entry point into, why does Howard Thurman say that about Jesus? That he is so dangerous that if we took his teaching seriously, they would destroy our civilization. Not one stone would be left on a stone. Jesus hangs out a lot with tax collectors and sinners and prostitutes. The Gospels again and again and again and again say Jesus hangs out a lot with tax collectors and sinners and prostitutes. And Jesus says that himself. Jesus reports the gossip. He says, people say I'm a glutton and a drunkard and I hang out with tax collectors and sinners. He says that about himself. He self-reports it. And so consider for one moment with me what tax collectors represented at that time and in this place. So probably nobody likes paying taxes anyway, right? But this is not the IRS that we're talking about here. This is tax being collected by an oppressive, occupying foreign power. And so Rome did not itself collect its taxes. It asked local members of the Jewish community to do that. So if you can imagine, this is a local member of the Jewish community using his inside knowledge on behalf of the oppressive, occupying foreign power. You can imagine how much that person would have been liked by the local members of the community. That's who Jesus goes home with and has dinner with. And so I'm just inviting each of us for a moment to feel our way into that. That's what Howard Thurman says. He says we have to feel our way into that. Jesus was a member of the local Jewish community. In order to do that, in order to actually see the universal brotherhood, the universal siblinghood, the universal kinship, the sisterhood with the tax collector, the sinner, the prostitute, the way the yogis would put it, the light in Jesus had to look past all the personality structures. It had to look past the good behavior. It had to look past the bad behavior. And it had to connect with the pure light in that one. And notice what becomes possible then. Notice that for each of us, it actually is possible. Call into your awareness someone you don't find it easy to get along with. Allow wholeness within yourself to look past the personality structure, to look past good behavior and bad behavior, to look past history and to look past pain. Notice what happens when you connect with that being in that way. The walls of separateness crumble. And so it's not that Jesus is endorsing behavior that is out of balance with the laws of energy, not at all. Like when he rescues the woman who's about to be killed because she's been caught in the act of adultery, he says to her, "Go and sin no more." But he also makes it very, very clear that there is not a single human who has not been out of balance with the laws of energy. And so none of us can judge another. None of us can hold ourselves separate from another. And so this is a teaching straight from Jesus, and there's a couple more that are like this as well. Jesus says, "What do you think?" This again is about the tax collectors and the prostitutes. And it's saying, if you consider yourselves superior to them, this message is for you. What do you think? There was a man who had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, "Son, go and work today in the vineyard." "I will not," he answered. But later he changed his mind and went. Then the father went to the other son and said the same thing. He answered, "I will, sir," but he did not go. Which of the 2 did what his father wanted? "The first," they answered. Jesus said to them, "Truly, I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are entering the kingdom of God ahead of you. For John came to you to show you the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes did." There's another, I didn't print out this scripture, so I'm just talking it through, but there's another teaching that Jesus gives where he says there's 2 people presenting themselves in prayer at the altar, coming before the divine, presenting themselves in prayer. And one of them is a Pharisee who is being self-righteous and who is saying, "Lord, thank God you didn't make me one of those tax collectors." And then there's a tax collector who's at a distance from the altar, who's weeping, who's opening his heart to the divine and who's weeping. And Jesus says that it is the tax collector in that case who is close to God. It's not the Pharisee who is congratulating himself on how close to God he is. And so just think about this for a second. What this particular teaching is saying, among other things, I invite you to meditate ongoingly on this, is let go of the walls of separateness. Let go of anything that seems to separate us from other humans. Independent of the behavior of the other humans, they are a child of the same immortal light. They are a child of the same divine parent. They're a child. They're an expression of the same source, of the same wholeness. So let go of those walls of separateness, because that actually prevents us from coming close to the divine. And that's what the Pharisee is doing. He's holding on to the walls of separateness, saying, "Thank God I'm not like those tax collectors." And the tax collector opens his heart to the divine. Tears stream down his face because he's not pretending to be something he's not. He's allowing divine grace to see him totally. And so that right there is a question for each of us. Can I allow myself to open totally to divine grace? Am I willing to let go of the pain? Am I willing to let go of the walls of separateness? Am I willing to let go of the judgment? Am I willing to let go of holding myself apart? Am I willing to open my heart and allow divine grace to see all of me? If I allow myself to stand in the light, that light will show me exactly where to bring myself into balance with the laws that govern and guide and uphold the whole universe. And if I am in contact with that light, tears will be streaming down my face. And I won't be congratulating myself and saying, "Oh, thank God, I'm not like those. I'm not like those people." And so when we allow our hearts to open to the divine, when we truly allow ourselves to be seen by divine grace, pain melts away, and we know in our bodies and our hearts and our minds in our lives what is next to transform, what is next to support, what is next to change. And so this particular passage that Jesus tells the story of the two sons, it is about the willingness to change. The one at first says, no, I'm not going to go and work today in the vineyard. Later, he changed his mind and went. And so the question is, am I open to that transformation? Am I open to that change? Am I open to allowing myself to be renewed? Am I open to allowing myself to let go of the old images that I've held on to, the old pain, the old categories, the old limitations that I've held on to, so that I'm allowing myself to see new continually, freshly, ongoingly? If we see new continually, freshly, ongoingly, our world will change. And that's why Howard Thurman says these teachings of Jesus are dangerous. They actually will crumble and melt away the structures that support separateness and the structures that support judgment. So Aldous Schreiner said once in a letter to a friend, she said, this doesn't fit into words very well. She said, if I go to see a prisoner in prison, I'm going to visit myself. And she said, if I go out among the rocks alone, I am not alone. Each of us is invited to live in that consciousness. We cannot help another without helping ourselves. Never for one moment are we alone. We are asked, go and work today in the vineyard. That means each of us today, but not just one day, and not just 1 week, and not just one season, but for a lifetime. Each of us is asked, go and work today in the vineyard. That means daily, regular, steady, faithful meditation and karma yoga. The practice of a lifetime, the joy of a lifetime, because that it is which brings us directly into contact with the laws of energy that uphold the whole universe. That it is which gives us the inspiration to stand on this small spot of earth where each of us stands and to say, the kingdom of peace will be made visible this day in me and through me, through the choices that I make. And then in my words, in my thoughts, in my actions, the kingdom of peace will share. And silently, as I connect to that energy of the kingdom of peace, it connects. It reaches those who otherwise would not be reachable. So that's one of the reasons why Jesus goes and has dinner so often with the tax collectors and the sinners and the prostitutes. They are willing in these stories to open their hearts. Remember the story of the prostitute who weeps over Jesus' feet. They are willing to open their hearts and allow themselves to be seen by the divine. They are willing to be spiritually honest. They are willing to acknowledge where they have been out of balance. And then the next step is go and labor in the vineyard today, so that each of us stays in balance, so that each of us rises into the full expression of the light that we always are. So connecting with that wholeness, that vastness, that light, that magnificence, that joy, that gladness, and allowing that day by day, moment by moment, through our tiny human hands to share itself. Through the love and through the kindness and through the steadiness that we are able to be, that we are able to bring. I will also just notice when we connect with that wholeness in ourselves and we look past the personality structures, past the good and bad behavior, that's where forgiveness is. Only there does forgiveness become possible. And if we are able to hold that energy and that frequency of forgiveness, that's where the one in need of forgiveness is able to rise up and able to step forward in wholeness, able to step forward in light, able to step forward in beauty, able to step forward in worth, able to step forward in love. Every time we make that choice, we make of our lives a bridge to a land of freedom. And these teachings, again and again and again, say that over that bridge that we make with our lives to the land of freedom, will cross the entire human race. Thank God, and God bless us all.